As global pressure mounts to end the suffering in Gaza, dozens of ministers are gathering today at the United Nations for a high-level conference on the two-state solution, co-chaired by France and Saudi Arabia. The conference comes amid worsening humanitarian conditions in Gaza and marks a historic diplomatic shift, with France poised to become the first Western power to formally recognize Palestine as a state. But with both Israel and the United States absent from today's meeting, a pressing question remains. Does this meeting reflect a truly united global stance to end Israel's genocide war on Gaza? And can it deliver meaningful steps toward a lasting resolution? Welcome to Think Tank. Now let's move on to the ongoing United Nations high-level ministerial session on the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestinian and the implementation of the two-state solution.
Is the need to build trust through mutual respect, coexistence and humanitarian issues by focusing on these topics. Fourth, it was emphasized that measures should be taken against hate speech and incitement to violence. This needs to be dealt with. Fifth, some of the topics that were included was the importance of protecting independent media and journalists and the need to combat disinformation. Sixth, the role of education was highlighted as essential for promoting peace. Seventh, it was noted that there is a need to engage actors, specifically women and youth, and to have platforms and programs for dialogue between both parties. Eight, it was also included that we must benefit from previous successful experiences to promote peace. The essential role of civil society was also highlighted. In closing, we hope that the consultation meetings of the working group will lead the conference to take outcomes that will make sure that the international community will undertake its responsibilities regarding the Palestinian state to take future steps, and that this will be a basis for the work in the future, and that there needs to be an active follow-up for proposals and initiatives. We also look forward to have this conference participate in the establishment of an independent Palestinian state that is a sovereign, geographically contiguous, with sovereignty on the borders of 1967, with East Jerusalem as its capital, that has international recognition and the UN membership that it deserves. Thank you.
شكرا. والآن نعطي الكلمة.
Thank you. We now give the statement to the Minister for Canada.
Excellencies, delegates, distinguished guests, I would like to begin by thanking France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for bringing us together at this critical moment. Painful realities that continue to tear at the fabric of the region. Escalating violence, devastating civilian casualties, hostages still in captivity, a deepening humanitarian crisis in Gaza, relentless settlement expansion in the West Bank, and the continued threat of terrorism. All of this making the prospects for peace feel more distant. Canada believes a two-state solution remains the only viable path to lasting peace for both Palestinians and Israelis. At the plenary session this afternoon, I will have more to say about Canada's position. We are here today because this moment demands political courage and resolve. And we must stand together and choose a different path, one that leads toward a sustainable and a just solution. And political agreements alone are not enough. We must also address the narratives shaping identity, perception, and legitimacy, as these lie at the heart of the conflict. As G7 President, Canada is engaging closely with regional partners, and the message is clear. The region must be defined by peace, by stability, and by dignity for all. Guided by this understanding, Canada, alongside Qatar and Mexico, is co-leading this Narrative for Peace working group, aimed at building an inclusive framework grounded in dignity and coexistence. Peace is not only about borders and agreements, it is also about shared stories and understanding that humanize all sides and foster trust. Canada is committed to initiatives that amplify voices of peace, promote understanding, and reject division. We support local mediation and peace-building efforts, empower youth and women leaders, and champion press freedom and inclusive dialogue. I would like to briefly mention two other working groups at this conference in which Canada is contributing also: the security sector and humanitarian action and reconstruction groups. En tant que principal contributeur,
as the main contributor to the Office for the Coordinator for Security since 2005, Canada advocates coordinated regional support, unified Palestinian governance, and cooperation in security with Israel. As I will mention this afternoon, on the humanitarian level, Canada prioritizes the protection of civilians, the improvement of humanitarian access, and reconstruction led by Palestinians, focusing on transformations to enhance and strengthen Palestinian institutions.
Determined to work alongside our partners to deliver real, tangible solutions on the ground. And above all, Canada remains committed to a future where Palestinians and Israelis can live side by side in peace and dignity. Merci beaucoup.
أشكر معالي وزيرة خارجية كندا وأعطي الكلمة.
I thank the Foreign Minister of Canada, and I give the floor now to the Permanent Representative of Mexico.
Señores copresidentes,
Co-chairs, distinguished colleagues, Mexico expresses its deep appreciation to Qatar and Canada for their steadfast commitment to our working group that is tasked with exploring potential peace narratives that may contribute to the implementation of the two-state solution. On the basis of consultations held within our group, a broad consensus emerged around the idea that while diplomatic negotiations are a sine qua non for achieving a lasting resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, they must be accompanied by an effective peace narrative. Such a narrative, at the same time, should play a key role in shaping public discourse and influencing the way in which future generations are educated. A significant point of convergence among the contributions that we received is that education is one of the foremost factors to achieve and sustain peace. In this regard, allow me to highlight the following proposal. It is essential that both Palestinian and Israeli school curricula include history classes that emphasize the commonalities between both cultures. Likewise, initiatives aimed at fostering future peaceful coexistence between Palestinians and Israelis must be prioritized. We must prove that coexistence is possible. Perhaps the symphonic orchestra founded 26 years ago now by the Israeli conductor and pianist Daniel Barenboim and the Palestinian writer Edward Said, known as the West Eastern Divan Orchestra, is perhaps the best example of how both cultures can even produce high-quality art as a result of joint collaboration. Let's therefore begin our work this morning with the staunch belief that two states represent the only viable solution at this stage of what represents one of the great tragedies of history, and one which we bear the generational responsibility to resolve. Thank you very much.
شكرا سعادتكم.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now invite the Foreign Minister of Brazil,
الرئيس المشارك لمجموعة العمل السابعة,
the co-chair of Working Group 7, to deliver his remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, Brazil co-chaired with Senegal Roundtable 7 on promoting respect for international law. The ordeal Palestinians face stands as a test to our collective commitment to international law, humanitarian law, and human rights. When confronted with credible allegations of genocide, invoking international law is not enough. We must enforce it with resolve. Last year, the International Court of Justice laid out clear guidelines on how states must fulfill their obligations regarding the unlawful occupation of Palestine. They include not recognizing the unlawful situation created by Israel's presence in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem, differentiating in all dealings with Israel between its territory and the occupied Palestinian territory, refraining from any action that may aid or contribute to maintaining occupation, and ensuring respect for the Palestinian people's right to self-determination and the Fourth Geneva Convention. Guided by the Court's opinion, Working Group 7 formulated 3 questions to inform member states' action. First, what actions can states adopt to promote and ensure compliance with international law? Second, what accountability mechanisms can be activated to address relevant and lawful actions, policies and practices, and to ensure reparation? Third, what preventive measures can be taken against illegal unilateral actions undermining the viability of the two-state solution? We received over 50 submissions from multiple stakeholders. These inputs generated 96 concrete proposals grouped in 5 areas: diplomatic and political, arms trade, economic, accountability and reparation, and monitoring. The following stood out: recognizing the State of Palestine and supporting its admission as a full UN member, upholding the legal distinction between Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory, opposing annexation and settlement expansion, ensuring protection for humanitarian workers, including UNRWA staff, supporting civil society and human rights defenders, imposing targeted sanctions against violent settlers and lawful countermeasures to grave violations. Excellencies, these are lawful actions that states can take now. The credibility of the international legal order depends on its non-selective application. What is now needed is the political will and a robust follow-up process to this conference. Let us turn law into action and action into justice and peace. I thank you.
شكرا معاليكم. نعطي.
Thank you. I now invite the Foreign Minister of Senegal, the co-chair of Working Group 7, to deliver her remarks.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is with an acute sense of responsibility that I stand alongside my counterpart from Brazil to present the results of Working Group 7. Without further ado, I will touch on the proposals that we received in the 4 other areas of action. In arms trade, contributors recommended strengthening the due diligence process, monitoring the final use and export controls. Some called for bilateral military embargoes in line with the arms trade treaty. In terms of economic measures, proposals included restrictions on trade and from the settlements, the regulation and conduct in the private sector, and also looking at domestic legislation. Strengthening the UN database on companies in the settlements and technical and financial support to Palestinian companies, including for the reconstruction of Gaza, were also strongly promoted. In terms of accountability and reparations, both were highlighted. Cooperation with the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice, activation of universal jurisdiction, supporting the work of the Human Rights Council and the Independent Commission of Inquiry under the auspices of the United Nations. Several proponents also recommended looking at the Convention on Crimes Against Humanity. In terms of monitoring, one of the main proposals made was resolving in the 12 months after the conference the voluntary reports describing the measures taken to implement international measures and to implement the results of the conference. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the restitution exercise is never easy, particularly in such a short time. Therefore, we would like to thank all of the parties that contributed to this process, which was inclusive and exhaustive in nature. The proposals that we received reflect a broadly shared understanding that of the erosion of international law in the occupied Palestinian territory, and the fact that this is a legal failure but also a moral and political one. It also reaffirmed a principles-based position, which is that of the primacy of law over might. This proposal is the only path towards lasting peace through a 2-state solution anchored in international law, respecting the rights of the people of Palestine to self-determination and guaranteeing the right of both Palestinian and Israeli people. Thank you.
أشكر معالي وزيرة خارجية السنغال.
I thank the Foreign Minister of Senegal. I now invite the Deputy Foreign Minister of the Republic of Turkey, the co-chair of Working Group 7, to deliver the remarks of Working Group 6.
Esteemed Ministers of co-chairing and participating states, Excellencies, dear colleagues, I would like to thank France and Saudi Arabia for co-chairing the conference and all stakeholders, including civil society organizations, for their valuable contributions to the work of Working Group 6. I would like to thank our Irish colleagues for their excellent cooperation and the hard work they put into our efforts to co-chair our working group. I wish also to take this opportunity to welcome the announcement of France to recognize the State of Palestine. We sincerely hope that many others will follow suit soon. Before sharing with you the priorities and recommendations that came out of the submissions in our working group, allow me to share with you some general observations regarding our deliberations. Firstly, we have seen the strong desire among the stakeholders to contribute to ending the decades long suffering of the Palestinian people. Contributions received highlighted the areas where concrete action is needed to realize this vision. There were submissions rightfully proposing programs to help build capacity in the Palestinian Authority. Yet, empowering the State of Palestine calls for addressing the urgent question of how to end the Israeli occupation. Therefore, the root cause is still there. During our deliberations, it was a recurring view that the continued occupation is the main obstacle on the way to Palestinian statehood. While the annexation of Palestinian territories by Israel is looming, as called for by the Israeli parliament on July 23rd, our tools should be proportionally strong and effective. Some stakeholders made submissions proposing the establishment of mechanisms to enforce international law and international humanitarian law. We also observed that the addition to the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza, illegal settlements, confiscation of land, house demolitions by Israel in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, also call for urgent action. Some stakeholders emphasized that measures, including sanctions, should be imposed against settlers in the occupied Palestinian territory. Israel may also be subjected to coercive measures as it is the enabler of the illegal settlements. The acts of Israel to displace, dislocate and expel Palestinian people from their homeland should be prevented without any delay. We cannot envisage the state of Palestine without the Palestinian nation. The core priorities that came out of the submissions can be listed as follows. First, implementation of the two-state solution. Second, recognition of the State of Palestine and the admission of the State of Palestine as a full member in the UN. Third, humanitarian and reconstruction efforts in Gaza. Fourth, institutional development. Fifth, halting settlement expansion and forced displacement. 6, accountability and the rule of law. 7, civil society engagement. 8, security guarantees for both people. The submissions send a clear message. The international community must act urgently and decisively to preserve the two-state vision, to uphold legal and humanitarian principles, and to move beyond expressions concerned to activating mechanisms of accountability. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Turkey, and I now invite Her Excellency Emir Higgins, Minister of State at the Department of Public Expenditure, Infrastructure, Public Service Reform and Digitalization of Ireland and co-chair of Working Group 6.
I would like to begin at the outset by thanking France and Saudi Arabia for all of their work to date, and to all of the co-chairs and their teams for all of their work, including our own team in Ireland. I'd also like to thank Minister Yilmaz and express my appreciation to Turkey for their excellent cooperation. I'm delighted that former President of Ireland, Mary Robinson, is here with us today, and I thank her for her decades of dedication to the protection of human rights. This conference, delegates, is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to bring a renewed sense of urgency and to demonstrate a spirit of shared responsibility for seeking a political situation to this absolutely devastating conflict. The humanitarian situation in Gaza has reached new depths of despair and new depths of misery. Mass starvation is now...
That was the United Nations high-level ministerial session on the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution, where world leaders expressed their concern over the catastrophic situation in Gaza and affirmed that the two-state solution is the only way to ensure lasting peace. Co-chairing the conference, France and Saudi Arabia foreign ministers affirmed their commitment to fulfilling the aspirations of the Palestinians while calling for an immediate end to the suffering of Gaza. That brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank, where we covered one of the most critical international meetings addressing the future of Palestine. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.